Vineyard.
We are Vineyard.
I will sit with pastor groups and have them 100% say Sabbath is impossible. 100% of them. And I'm like, wow, Sabbath is impossible. and I can't help but just sort of like push that ahead to sort of wonder what's going to happen to that person who's saying that and the church that they're a part of. If we don't know how to rest, if we don't have good rhythms of rest, we are going to be exhausted and we are going to eventually hit that wall, whatever the wall may be. I'm just convinced of it. I've seen it over and over and
Too
over
many
again
times,
in my own life as well as in the lives of others. How do you exegete? My soul finds rest in God alone. Psalm 62, verse 1. 7 words that'll change our life if we take them seriously. What does rest mean? What does spiritual resting look like?
Right.
Where we're actually maybe learning how to trust God? Because I think rest and trust are hand in glove. We're never going to really trust God if we're not resting in it.
Yeah.
We may close our eyes and fold our hands and pray, Lord, I trust you.
Yeah.
But then most of us open our eyes, unclench our fists, and get busy.
Welcome to the We Are Vineyard podcast, conversations to help us grow with Jesus and each other. In today's episode, Jay and Danielle Pathick talk with Steve Macchia, founder and president of Leadership Transformations. This is the first episode in a 2-part conversation series, so make sure to come back next week for part 2. Let's listen in.
We were all joking about how we do podcasts. You've done, I don't even know, probably a couple hundred or so. Danielle's done
2.
2 or 3.
I am not the professional in the room.
Well, I don't know if repetition makes you a professional. It's just occurred to me that we, with the Vineyard have now done like 150, 200 of these, which I didn't realize until literally sitting here now. So I guess that means we're just doing a lot of it. It doesn't make you a professional though. Like you can play a lot of golf and not be good.
True.
You can play, you can do a lot of things. Like we all cook, but that doesn't make us chefs. So I don't know if that makes me a professional.
Jay, you don't cook. You use the microwave.
Oh my
really
gosh.
well,
Here we go.
Like,
Here we go. Wait.
Yeah.
Hold on. What are we
I'm
doing right now?
roasting you.
Why are you roasting me? I was roasting myself, and now you're roasting me more. But anyway, all that's to say, thank you, Steve, for being here for this moment Danielle and I are having together. But by and large, what we mostly just want to do is hear your story, hear about some of the work that you do, because you've been such a gift, specifically to Danielle, to what the Vineyard's doing.
She's been a gift to me as well. It's 2-way street.
That's cool.
For sure.
Yeah, it'll just be fun to hear what's brought you to this point and how you're helping a lot of people like us. We're just really grateful. You've written a bunch of stuff, and so we'll get a chance to talk hopefully about some of that. But I'd love to start where all good stories begin, which is where you were born and where you grew up.
I was born in Winchester, Massachusetts, and I was raised in a neighboring town called Stoneham, Massachusetts.
It sounds huge.
Big metropolis that is on everybody's map.
Yeah, who hasn't heard of it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really...
99.9%, I'm sure have not heard of it. But I grew up in a very loving home. My parents loved their children really, really well. Especially my mom. The older I get, the more I miss her. She's been gone for 25 plus years.
Wow.
And she was a great mom. She was a very nurturing, loving, caring mom. My dad was, the typical Depression kid who had nothing, and he would say, if you walk by a penny on the floor, on the ground, it means that you don't care about the dollar in your pocket.
Whoa.
So, he was that kind of guy. He was very, very much aware of what he had and to steward it and to care for family. He was a provider. Mom was the nurturer. He was the provider.
What kind of work did he do?
He was a mechanical engineer for for the Air Force.
Oh, okay.
So
So technical mind.
Yeah, but he was very mechanical. He
Yeah.
could fix anything.
I bet.
One of his other lines was, "You're either gifted in the skill of fixing things, a tinkerer, or you're a thinkerer." And he would call me the thinkerer in the family because I didn't do any of the tinkering. He did all the tinkering.
That's so perfect. That's so great. And you're like, I think
I'm,
what does that mean? What are you saying about me? Huh,
what is the name of that instrument that you're using? So no, he never
so
taught me
great.
about tools or fixing things. He always did it himself, and for good or for ill.
Yeah. Well, he must have been good at what he did. That's a real job. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't just hand you
No
that job. Yeah.
No, he was building those big satellite dishes
Wow.
for the government to communicate in the sky.
Wow.
I don't really know all the
Right. You
particulars.
gave everything I just said is all I know about that.
That's all I know about it as well.
Don't ask even one more question. That was it. Yeah, I get it. I'm very similar to you in that I'm like, I wouldn't even know.
You're a thinker or two?
Oh, I mean, if you said, Jay, I need you to hang that door, I'd be like, oof.
Oof.
That's going to be the rest of the day right there.
Exactly.
And that's if it works. I don't even know if I can. It could be the rest of my life. Actually,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It would take a long
Who can
time.
I hire to help me get that thing done? Get that
Exactly.
door hung.
Totally. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. That-
But anyway, my wife laughs about anytime she had anything broken, she could take it to my dad.
Boom, done.
And it was taken care of.
I love it. That's so great. Okay, so
anyway,
he's a technician,
yeah.
hardworking guy.
Yeah, mom's the nurturer.
Mom's
I've
the
got two
nurturer.
sisters. I'm the baby of the family.
Oh, okay.
Spoiled,
Sure, totally.
provided for, cared for, whatever. Could get away with murder.
Yes, that's good.
and that was okay.
Yep.
We grew up in Stoneham, same house our entire growing up
Really?
years. In fact, we've kind of repeated that pattern, Ruth and I. We've been in the same house for 40 years.
Wow.
That's home. You might say we're in a rut, or you might say we're rooted.
Stable.
Stable.
We call that stability.
Yes, that's stability. That's a nice way to say
It's true.
we didn't want to move ever.
Hey, it sounds like you chose wisely. That's
Yeah.
what that sounds
Well,
like.
yeah,
I mean,
it's been a good run.
yeah.
Grew up in a very liberal congregational church where we learned about God, but we weren't introduced to God personally until my junior year of high school, when a gentleman by the name of Rich Ploss was a seminary student at Gordon Conwell, and he came and served in our church, in our youth ministry, for 1 year because he talked about Jesus too much and preached from the Bible.
So you had to go.
Two things that said
He's got to go.
He's got to go.
Yeah.
But revolutionized my life and a handful of other 16-year-olds that went to youth ministry, Pilgrim Fellowship on Sunday night, and it was great. He taught us that we could actually know God and have a personal relationship with Him. And then everything came alive. The scriptures came alive. Relationships came alive. I came alive. Wasn't really against my parents' upbringing. It was more of an enhancement of what they had done. My mom grew up Lutheran. My dad grew up Roman Catholic in devout families, my mom especially. So there was good root system.
Yeah.
And they accepted this friend of mine who, was telling the truth.
Yeah.
And it revolutionized everything about me and my way of living and thinking and processing and relating. So the next year I was a senior in high school. He was no longer the youth pastor,
Right.
but we still hung out together. And when I was deciding about college, I had hundreds of colleges to choose from in Boston. And instead I went sight unseen to Northwestern College in Orange City, Iowa,
Yeah.
in the northwest corner of the great state of Iowa. I had never been there before.
Danielle, don't we know doesn't one of the girls' friends play soccer there?
At Northwestern?
Yeah.
It sounds familiar.
There are
Is it
several Northwesterns.
Yeah.
No,
This
but it's the
is-
one in Iowa.
the one
This
in
is
Iowa?
Iowa.
It's a little school.
Little.
Is it D2?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we
Yeah. We
know people. Yeah. Anyway, it's just interesting. It's like, wow, I'd never heard of that school.
And why
before.
did you go sight unseen to Iowa?
Well, I just trusted Rich. He said that's where I should go. And as a parent, I would never let my kid go
Right.
today to a college that we didn't at least visit. But my parents so loved and trusted him. If Rich says that that's where Steve should go, then we probably should just do this.
Wow.
So
That's
my
so cool.
my sister got married on a Sunday, and I left on the Monday with my bags packed. And I was 4 days early. I had misread the information.
Oh.
So it was me and the football team. And I was not on the football team.
Wait, did you have a place
You don't
to
have
stay?
to say
This
anything
is
else.
so.
Did you
I
even
didn't.
have a bed?
I had a dorm room that was assigned to me, but even though I was early, and they let me eat, because I could have some food service, which was good.
Yeah, they didn't make you fast.
They
That was
didn't make
really
me fast,
Generous
which
of
was
them.
very generous of them. And I got to know the football team, and they were very kind to me. They would say, "Hey, Boston kid, talk to us." And I had a Boston
'Cause you had
accent,
it.
and they just loved hearing me talk. And I was like, "This is weird, but okay."
That's a great
I
start.
had no other option.
Right, what are you
because
gonna do?
I'm with the football team for me. And this big burly football player and his beautiful wife picked me up at Sioux City Airport. And they said to me, "So why are you here today?" And I'm like, "Well, I thought I was supposed
Yeah,
to be
it's
here
today, right? Yeah.
It was Monday, the 25th of August, 1970, whatever.
Right.
4 of the best years of my life, by far. Formative, deeply spiritual, got to know God intimately, had great mentors and professors and experiences. And it was just like, yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Met Ruth there, my wife. She was a farm girl growing up. And then her dad moved the family into town when he got into radio. He was a radio man in Sioux Center, Iowa. Again, not a place you've heard of. But there was a little radio station there, and he was the manager, and Ruth worked there part-time. And yeah, we got married and then came back to seminary myself because I thought I was going to be a school teacher, but that didn't work out, mostly because I thought I was going to teach 5th and 6th graders. But when I did my student teaching in a neighboring town in Iowa, I loved being with the kids until they came back from recess. And then I couldn't stand the smell of the room. So
It was that simple.
it was that simple.
So stinky.
Yeah, the 5th and 6th grade sweat and me.
Broke you.
Hormonal, man.
It was brutal. So I realized I cared more about them as kids than reading, writing, and arithmetic. And so when I went home that Christmas break, I was a senior, and a pastoral mentor friend of mine said, "When you come to seminary, will you work with us here at Grace Chapel?"
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, I'm not
never agreed
planning
to that. Yeah, right.
come to seminary.
Wow.
But he was a prophetic voice, and I ended up adding a Christian education major to my elementary education major. So I graduated with both of those and didn't do anything with elementary education, except I was a children's pastor. So
Well, that's a pretty big
kind
accept.
of, kind of came back around.
Yeah, it did.
And I didn't have to deal with, recess and
Yeah, totally.
post-recess
Yeah,
stress.
totally.
And yeah, so then I came to Gordon Conwell, worked at Grace Chapel. I was there for 11 years, 4 different pastoral positions. And then I went from there to Vision New England, where I served as the president of that regional ministry for 14 years. So now we're at 25. And then for the past 21 and a half, we've been doing leadership transformations. And that was, a God thing.
Yeah, so let's do a few of those turns backward. So seminary, you start to sense what sense of calling? Like how did you start to say, because it sounds like this guy says, "Oh, when you come to seminary," you're like, "Oh, well, maybe I should do that." So you go up and change that. And then you end up, there's plenty of people that get into seminary and then go, "This isn't for me," much like the 5th grade sweat. You know,
Exactly.
they usually
It's Adult Swim at that point.
exactly.
And that
It's
could be worse.
usually Greek and Hebrew for a lot of seminary students. They're
Yeah.
like, that's enough.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's their first pastoral counseling class. And they go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I am not cut out to sit with people who have their kids dying or it's maybe chaplaincy training. So the same thing happens to people in seminary as it did in your elementary experience. But it sounds like you weathered that and or had a sense of calling. How did you start to say, man, I can tell what I'm called to do?
Way back when I went to seminary, there was, in the first year, you took sort of a calling inventory. I forget what it was called, but I distinctly remember it because I realized when I was taking that, I wasn't sure I really cared about lost people.
Oh,
I hate to even admit that. The evangelist, the missionary, the outreach person, the lost person. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm supposed to really care about these people. And I cared more about the found people,
Yeah,
the church people,
sure.
the people that would already be there that we didn't have to go recruit from some other location. And I realized then I needed to do some deep prayer work to say, God, am I called to ministry? And I realized I do care about lost people. I do care about people that are struggling and hurting. And I had kind of a renaissance, an internal sort of wake up to, yeah, I'm here not just for church people. I'm here for lost and needy and desperate and forgotten.
And that came in the context of prayer?
It came in the context. Yeah, it was that evaluation tool, and then a sort of a self-awareness thing that I'm like, well, why am I here? Why am I here at seminary? Just because my mentor friend said I should be here, or am I really here because I really sense God calling me here? So, yeah, and that came back to me through my pastoral ministry at local church setting, but also at Vision New England, because Vision New England is all about evangelism.
Yep.
And it was all about reaching the lost people of our region. And I had a real passion for that. I had a growing sense of, even though I didn't think I had the gift of the evangelist, I knew that I had the calling of evangelism. And so here I took over the leadership of this 100-year-old organization that originally was called the Evangelistic Association of New England. During my tenure, we changed the name to Vision New England because no one ever got that old name correct. Even when they would look at a piece of paper that says Steve Macchia is from the Evangelistic Association of New England, everyone would change it to the Evangelical Association of New England.
Right.
Big difference between the
Yeah.
two.
And was it a whole bunch of churches that came
Lots
together?
of denominations.
Denominations?
Mostly in smaller, struggling churches in small regions of the 6-state corner. And we would become a resource for them in prison ministry, troubled youth ministry, deaf ministry, the disabled community. We had ministry resource people that were trained in those areas, and we could come alongside churches from 80 different denominations and resource them in these areas of ministry. It was delightful. And we had large events as well. So we had this thing called Congress every year in the middle of winter, and we'd have upwards to 10,000 people at that event. And we would do that every year. We were crazy enough to say, okay, next January or next February, and we'd have all the major speakers of the day, the authors, the speakers, they would come, and it was a major sort of renewal experience for the region.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I look back at my early seminary days, I had no idea what I was getting into. But I knew that I was committed to the church. I knew I was committed to Christ. I knew I was committed to the lost and the lonely, as well as the serious Christian who really wants to go deeper. And over the years, I've just had different avenues or seasons that the various parts of my call have been brought to the surface. And I really feel like now what I'm doing is much more focused on leadership, much more focused on spiritual formation, and very specifically, the topic that we're going to talk about is discernment. I really feel like we need a discerning generation of leaders who discern God first and foremost, and then can discern God at work in our midst and in our wider world, and then participate in what God's inviting us into.
Okay, so I know I get mildly obsessed about stories.
Yeah,
so
I love it.
So if we rewind the tape, you have this sense of like, I think I'm supposed to care about the natural affect of how I take this assessment tells me I don't care about these people the way I should.
Yeah.
In the context of prayer, you start to go, what? I think I do. I have a sense of God's call. But then you end up in a church context, and you mentioned briefly you were the children's pastor, but you had 4 different roles.
Yeah, I was the junior high pastor first.
Wow. So you went right back to that sweat smell.
I did. Totally did. That was my first role. And I learned all of the big transferable concepts of ministry working with that age group, for sure. And we could talk for
really
hours on that, because I really feel that particular age group requires a certain kind of persons to come alongside them to help them work through their awkwardness in their journey. And I think even as adults, we've got a lot of awkwardness.
It's the same.
It's the same.
Totally.
We're like middle schoolers.
Right. Totally.
With adult clothing on.
Right.
But anyway, so that was my first. And then I was the church's first children's pastor. And then I was in charge of all of the educational ministry of the church.
Wow.
And then I was senior associate pastor. It was a large church for our region.
Yeah.
Grace Chapel. It was the days when Gordon MacDonald was the senior pastor. I was there during what we called the reign of Gordon the First, because he came back after his season of brokenness and restoration. And I wasn't on staff then, but I was part of the church. And so it was a great church ministry experience.
And this is a side note that we don't have to talk about, but it might relate to what we'll talk about later. I was interviewing, do you know, there's a guy named Michael Cusick. Do you know him? So Michael, is here in Denver. And I was talking to him about ministry failures and how do pastors go through restoration. And We're doing that. And I said, so Michael, because Michael has his own story that's pretty dramatic of kind of repairing his life and his marriage and ministry. I said, Michael, this is an incredible story. I wish I could tell you I've heard like 100 stories like this, but I don't hear that many. Who do you know who's actually been kind of had a prolific ministry life? Things come apart and they kind of come back in a way that you think makes sense, not like somebody just said, well, welcome back, and everybody is concerned. And he said, honestly, like Gordon MacDonald is the best story I know. And we talked about that for a little while, why that was interesting. So it's really interesting that we were
in the thick of it.
Close, and the kind of work you do now.
Yeah.
I can't help but imagine some of what you experienced there helped shape some of how you think about ministry. That's
absolutely. And what I got to see, not necessarily be in the middle of to do, but what we could all observe, because we weren't all as heavily involved in the actual process. But it was definitely the best process I've ever seen to restore a broken, fallen leader. All the parts and pieces of caring for the person, caring for the marriage, caring for the children, caring for the church, caring for the person, the personhood, the soft spots of vulnerability, the larger parts of calling, and it just all was attended to.
Yeah.
And he will very quickly say that the only way he really survived it was through Gail, number one, his wife, who was awesome and still is, and friends. He realized he was doing ministry without friendship. And that has definitely impacted my life, my ministry. And what we currently do is we talk a lot about spiritual friendship. You can't do ministry on your own. It's impossible.
Yeah.
You're destined for a wall to hit. It won't look the same as other people's wall, but there's a wall out there. You're going to hit it if you think you can do this thing on your own. So spiritual friendship is an important topic for us these days.
That's really interesting. Okay, so what were, I assume in those turns through those different roles, it's probably the needs of the church, plus you having some kind of sense of like how you can be most helpful in the church, or maybe your gifts are shifting and maturing in different ways, middle school to kids to education. But what's the shift to where you go, I think I'm supposed to fire out from a local church and build this other kind of ministry? How did that start to turn in you, or was it people calling that out of you? I imagine it was both. But
it was both, but I had made one decision probably 10 years into my years at Vision New England. I was there 14. About 10 years in, I said to a friend of mine, I need someone to talk to. Because everyone that's talking to me and I'm talking to, they want something from me.
Right.
I'm sure you experience that.
From time to time, yes.
They're wanting something from you.
Yeah.
Whether it's tangible or intangible,
Yes.
they want it. And I just needed some place to go where that person didn't want anything from me, or didn't expect me to deliver anything. And I came upon the ministry of spiritual direction. And I had a spiritual director during that time. And that person still is my spiritual director.
Wow.
30 plus years later. He's amazingly tolerant of me. He's put up with the repetitive nature of my idiosyncrasies over and over again for all these years. When I started to see that spiritual director, I realized I really didn't know how to pray. I thought I did. I could do public prayers really well. I could write prayers. I could read prayers. But did I really know how to pray in terms of hearing the voice of God? He taught me how to listen to God. It was revolutionary.
And that was, so you've done all of seminary.
Oh, yeah.
However many years in church.
11 and another 10 in a nonprofit organization. So 21 years into this thing,
Right.
I'm realizing I got a lot to learn.
So, and this is, I'm sure you could talk about what I'm about to ask you for hours, but to the best of your ability, if I said, okay, Steve, you get to go back and talk to Steve coming out of seminary, you get like 10 minutes to look at Steve coming out of seminary, you get to talk to him about what it means to pray. Like, hey man, look at me. I know what you need. This is what prayer is. Here's what you think prayer is. Here's what prayer actually is. What would you want to say to him? What do you think that, or could he even hear it? I don't know, but like, because you know you, but to the best of your ability, what?
Well, interestingly, and I love your question, part of what I do today
Is that, right?
is I work with seminary students.
Right.
And I've been doing that for all of the years of LTI, 21 and a half years. I think I calculated once about a year ago, I've co-led a spiritual formation group more than 600 times in these years. And I have never seen a duplicate experience. I've never seen a duplicate story.
Wow.
I've never been bored once facilitating these groups. And it's very simple. It's learning how to listen to God in His Word, listen to the story that God is creating in you, and learn how to really listen to another. When you do that, you're learning how to pray. Because prayer is attentiveness to God. It's communication. But we're good at speaking to God. We're not at all good listening to His voice. We're too busy. We're too active. We're too productive. We're too professional, to use that word.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've been taught how to really listen to God. So I'm teaching these students how to listen to God they're not all sitting in these groups. Not everybody wants it. And I understand that.
Yeah.
I hope that eventually they will. But, we talk about sort of inward prayer, upward prayer, outward prayer, like Prayer of the Heart's True Home, Richard Foster's book, one of the best books on prayer. And what we teach to go along with that is the attentiveness. Like I was just doing a retreat here in Colorado Springs yesterday. The whole day is about listening to the Word, listening to God in prayer, listening to our life story, and practicing examine or practicing journaling or practicing the reflective disciplines that we're teaching all the time through our ministry. So I think what I would say to the seminary student today, learn how to listen. You don't have to be an expert. You're getting a master's in divinity, but you are so far away from mastering the divinity. That's not our goal. That's not what we're called to do. We're here to hear from God. We're here to receive from God. We're here to delight in God so that we can have some sense of delighting in who God made me to be. And we're different. You're different from Danielle. Danielle's different from me. There's only one Danielle. There's only one Jay. There's only one Steve. Never, ever will there be another.
Yeah.
So if we can, and this spiritual director would hear my story and would point me back to my prayer, the scriptures, noticing, paying attention, so that when I felt bad about being a broken record, he would say, don't shame yourself.
Yeah.
Speak, give voice to what you're noticing, what you're experiencing. It's all okay.
Yeah.
And as soon as we shame another person or blame or put another person down for doing or not doing, because in our rubric, they should do or do not. I mean, we end up like the Pharisees.
Yeah.
And the Pharisees were a bunch of legalists, rule creators, and they kept adding and adding. I mean, we know the Pharisees had thousands of rules, and a lot of them related to Sabbath, which is the time we're supposed to rest.
Right.
And they had all these rules and regulations, and Jesus comes and sets everybody free, and they get ticked off that he healed someone on the Sabbath.
Yeah. Broke a rule.
Yeah, broke the rule.
Right.
Shame on you.
Right.
And I just think what happened to me in direction slowly over those 4 or 5 years, I was like, I'm becoming a different person.
Yeah.
Spiritually.
Yeah.
Not that the past was bad.
Right.
It was preparatory for what I was about to enter into. And then how did LTI start? LTI started because of a dream. And we could talk about that if you want. It's a way that God spoke to me uniquely. He's never done it that way since or before. But that early Sunday morning in Quebec City, when my wife and I were away for a long weekend, he spoke. And it took me months to discern what he was saying. But
Steve,
I was open to it.
Yeah.
I really want to hear that story. I want to hear you describe that story, but I do want to emphasize what you just said about the environment that the spiritual director, helped provide for you and helped kind of normalize, it feels like, in your life. Just an environment of safety and I get the impression, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but get the impression that he kind of guarded that space for you. Because I do think that there is something in the human spirit or mind that does tend to be a little bit more critical, right? Like we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and or that self-criticism can kind of flare up that completely destroys any sense of exploration or just kind of wondering. And so what I hear you describe is somebody had to help you to give you permission to kind of explore that space in the really safe and kind and compassionate way to hear the Lord's voice. And I just want to emphasize that because I think that that's incredibly, incredibly important. And I don't know if a lot of people have that type of protected, safe space to learn like that. Feels really important.
It is very important. I have found over the years that very few people want to be fixed. Everybody wants to be listened to.
Yes.
And we in pastoral ministry, we are trained, we are educated, we've got these degrees and these big, pretty things that we hang on the wall, and we lose the teachable spirit because we have to be the know-it-alls. We're asked questions and we fear saying, I don't know. I don't know are probably three of the most liberating words to say. I don't know. Let's go explore that together. Instead, we think we have to have the answers. And when we are listening to a person's story, I know exactly what you need. And we're going to prescribe.
We're going to fix.
We're going to fix you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't fix us. And if it does something temporary maybe. It doesn't really do it long term. What I was experiencing in direction was something that was impacting my life long term. I didn't realize it. And so part of the dream, part of the desire for the past 21 and a half years is to provide spiritual direction for leaders. So that if we can provide them for leaders, then make them better listeners, then perhaps there would be a trickle down or trickle out effect in the wider church.
Yeah.
And yeah, that speaks right into my passion bucket right there.
This summer, Vineyard USA is hosting our national conference, Melody and Harmony, in 2 locations, Denver, Colorado on June 16th through 19th, and Cincinnati, Ohio on July 14th through 17th. We hope that by offering 2 locations and dates, everyone, pastors, leaders, volunteers, even those just curious about the Vineyard, that everyone will be able to find a time to join us. The conference will also have specific programming for adults, youth, and kids. As far as our theme, throughout history, the Lord has been composing a beautiful melody through the story of his people and his church. And for the past 50 years, the Vineyard movement has had the privilege of adding its own unique harmony to this grand symphony. Registration's now open with early bird pricing, so make sure to check out vineyardusa.org to learn more and register today.
Well, and I want to get to the dream because I think that's important. But before we do that, I just want to parse one last bit here,
Yep.
and then I promise we're going to move into all the things. When you have done now what ended up being, I've almost got the numbers. It was 10 years of church ministry,
11,
14.
and
14. That's what it was.
Yeah, plus 21.
Right. So, okay. I doubt in any of that time you think you're not praying, number one.
Right.
Number two, if someone asks you, hey, how do you think you're doing with God? What's life like? You'd be like, things are great. I love the Lord. I pray. I read my Bible. I do whatever. It sounds like you have, and I'm reading in a little bit, so tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you have what would be like a good, solid, probably evangelical
Yep.
foundation. Like I can answer the right questions in the true false test. I basically know what moral behavior should be.
Yep.
I want people to come to Christ because I know that's important. I even probably want people to know the Bible and flourish in the way I understand it. So again, these aren't like...
These are not bad things.
No, they're not aberrant or controlling or damaging or toxic or whatever the words are people don't use. But then this other door opens to you that you're like, whoa, there's like a fresh gust of wind here. Was there any part of you, because I experience many who are framed in the way you were describing, being skeptical, nervous, maybe a little bit anxious of that kind of a move, because it feels, if you've been framed in a certain way, it feels unmoored. It feels sort of, dare I say, woo-woo-y or something like, like it's like, is this okay? Am I putting myself in a strange position here? Or some of it's kind of a classic Protestant anxiety about Catholics. Some of it's
Right.
something else. It just feels less intellectual. It feels less manageable. I don't know how else to say it. Did you have any of those inclinations, or were you like, well,
Yes.
no, I'm just so hungry?
Yes, but what I came to realize is that, let's put it this way, God made us with a right hand and a left hand.
Right, that's good. Yep.
I need both. But if I never use my left hand, it will atrophy.
Mm.
I need to use that left hand. It doesn't mean that I exclude the use of my right. I still, if a dominant right,
Yeah.
I'm going to still use that. Same, I believe, with prayer. If I have been taught well to cry out to God, to worship and praise God with my voice, and collectively and individually, if I have a heart for people that are struggling, I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to supplicate in their behalf. Absolutely. If I feel like I've gone down a detour, I need to confess my sins. I need to pour out my heart. But where, in my experience during those years, no one was teaching me to shut down everything
Yeah.
and just listen. And what we teach now is every one of us has questions of God. Ask your questions. But like with another, listen to what he has to say.
Yeah.
That's where people get scared. I'm not saying either or. I'm saying both and. We need a right hand and a left hand, a right eye, a left eye, a right foot, a left foot. It's the way God made it. And I believe in my relationship with him. I want to exalt his name, praise him, confess my sins, pray for the needs of the world. But then when I get into my prayer closet, which I think is another topic we could cover, because I don't think many believers, never mind pastor types, still have a prayer closet. And I think we need a prayer closet. So when I go to my prayer closet, I'm praying in a different way. I'm not praying, I may be exalting, I may be confessing, I may be praying for the needs of others, but in this relationship, this two-way street, when am I ever posturing myself just to listen to my Heavenly Father?
Yeah.
Speak life over me. Speak delight over me. Speak joy over me. Speak instruction over me. Speak awareness over me. Clarity over me. Discernment. That's where I think we have failed. I think the evangelical church has failed to teach its people how to listen. We're not good listeners. And I really believe that in the biblical text, every example that's a really good example of godliness has a lot of connectedness to God, where you've heard the instruction, you've seen the cloud, you've seen the bush start on fire, and you're going to respond to that. So a lot of the ways in which we've been taught to pray are me making a choice to, at that time, open my mouth and begin to pray. Whether it's in a small group, a worship time, people feel bad when they can't pray well in public. That shouldn't be, because that's a performance.
Yeah.
I can't perform like Jay can perform. Well, you're not Jay.
Yeah.
How can you be you?
Well, and Jay's probably not Jay. Yeah, for what it's worth. Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, honestly.
If we
Right.
get in touch with the true
Right.
the true us,
Right.
perhaps we are pretending to be holier than we actually are.
Totally.
Perhaps.
Yes.
Not present company excluded.
Yeah, of course.
But,
Of course.
so, Jay, I just think we're missing so many fundamental things that I want to be one of those people that reminds us of the other side. I think that when you talk about creativity, is the same thing. We're machines. We got to get stuff done. So to go color a picture, like yesterday we had pads of paper and coloring instruments and pipe cleaners, and sometimes we have clay, because I think the other side of us that's really missing is the creative. We're very dutiful. We're very productive. We can get stuff done. That's what we get applauded for. What's next? What's new? You know, what are you going to do next?
Yeah.
What hill are you going to go conquer? And God forbid that we say, none. We're going to just hang out.
Right.
We would say, you're going to do what?
Right.
We're going to pay you to hang out?
Right.
We need to pay people to hang out more. Put their feet up on the table and just be. Close your eyes and imagine something creative, or go and take a piece of paper. And I remember the first time my spiritual director said, Steve, I want you to color for the next hour. I'm like, no way. And I refused the first time. And he was like, why'd you refuse? I'm like, I didn't feel like I was playful. And he's like, well, maybe next time. And next time I colored. All of a sudden, time went away, productivity departed. I was like hanging out with God. It was, I didn't create something great or worthy to hang in some museum. But I exercised the other side of me that had been neglected and atrophied, or never once brought to life. Never mind atrophy, never been attended to.
Yeah. That's really good. And I mean, I think for me, listening to you, what I reflect on, which is sort of a new thought, is, you know, our vineyard story would be, we understand ourselves as people that have generally been good evangelicals that have encounters with the Spirit.
Yeah.
In a particular way. Mostly resting in God in the context of worship. We would not fashion ourselves as Pentecostals, though Pentecostals are great, but we see ourselves differently by way how we've experienced the Spirit. And so we operate a little bit differently. And yet, what you're offering is sort of another wrinkle in that I think Vineyard folks, we've been open to, yet cautious around contemplative spirituality. It doesn't mean we're closed, because we have an intuition towards like waiting on God. We kind of like, I think that's what's supposed to happen when we go to, but we're waiting on God so that we go pray for people, so that we get into action.
And how long do you wait?
Well, sometimes a while, truthfully. I mean, kind of the old funny stories about Wimber, as he'd be standing there seemingly forever. And then sometimes would be like, I guess we're done with the meeting. And people would be like, what? We all came to do the crazy thing. And he'd be like, nope, I just think we're done. Which took guts in that kind of a context where everybody's showing up for when's the fireworks display start? And he's like, but I don't think there are any today. I think we're going to go home. Or he would wait long enough to where he's like, I think this is maybe what we're discerning, which in our context felt like an eternity. But you're saying, no, it's a whole nother thing to just wait, to just be with God. There might not, and often isn't, anything to do.
Right.
That being with God is sufficient enough to make you into a certain kind of person, which is contrary to the impulse of evangelize all of New England.
Right.
That doesn't mean it doesn't mean it doesn't work in tandem with that. So I appreciate you qualifying that, saying, no, you still need your other hand. So I assume, and I could be wrong, but I assume many pastors and leaders that you describe are resistant in the manner you were resistant to coloring for an hour. I assume many people might be listening to us are like, oh my gosh, this
guy's a nut.
It's just hard. Listen, can I show you my to-do list? Can I list for you the 100 people that are frustrated that I have not called them? I mean, that's about every pastor I know.
Right.
You know, if you press any pastor I know or any leader I know, at any moment they're 100 short. Like there's 100 people, if they call them all in a row and talk to them, that would all be like, finally, yeah, you finally care. And by the way, it doesn't matter what size the church is.
Right.
That's what's really interesting. We're not talking about big church versus little church right now. We're talking about like a mentality of understanding ourselves in ministry. What are some of the ways or some of the things that you do that helps people start to slow that down or relax that, or maybe even in your own life? What really over time, and I'm not asking for a magical
Right.
answer. I mean, but just you do this for a living, you've been doing it a while. What do you start to notice? And I appreciate you noticing there's people that don't want to do that. Like you said, there's plenty that are like, no
Yeah.
thanks. I'm
Yeah.
not taking that class, or I'm not doing that.
Exactly.
But when you start to see fruit, what are the things that you notice maybe shift in yourself or in other people?
Well, you use the word notice. I would say a deeper noticing, a deeper, more profound sense of underneath the surface, as opposed to what's obvious. And so, we talk about rest, for example. I think that's a good word to exegete. What does rest really mean? It's not something just to try once and either exit out or, when we talk about Sabbath rest, that's to be not just a day of the week, but a lifestyle.
No.
So we talk about that, Sabbath. When Sabbath takes root in the heart of a leader, that leader is destined to go deeper in their walk with God. In fact, I would say it is the turnkey to the deeper life, singularly, Sabbath. We can break every other of the 10 commandments and we'll, get in trouble. We can break the Sabbath, the fourth commandment, and no one gives us a hassle.
Well, actually, they might reward us.
They
might
would,
be
they might reward us.
You
Exactly.
actually produce some more, so you get an attaboy or a.
So we do a lot of talk about rest. What is rest? What is Sabbath rest? I think that's an important marker, mile marker. I just mentioned creativity. I would couple creativity with the word beauty. How often do we attend to the desire for the beautiful? Creation. I mean, you live in Colorado, one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth. I come here, every time I come here, I can't get my eyes off of the mountains or the cloud formations.
Yeah.
I mean, I was on retreat yesterday. I took a bunch of pictures because for me, pictures are helpful for me to remember and give thanks, which is one of my reflective practices. So, and I would add the word play. What is play and work?
Yeah.
I think we're working far too hard, far too long. I think we've been given 24 hours, and leaders of past generations have said 8 hours for work, 8 hours for recreation, and 8 hours for rest. Simple.
It's pretty straightforward, yeah.
We're doing 16 hours of work, and we're proud of it, and we're acclaimed for it, and we're productive, and we can put our head in the pillow at night and say, wow, that was a really big day, good day, got a lot done. I just think we have our rubrics upside down. So I on purpose will suggest things like coloring or doing something creative.
Yeah.
Or like yesterday, I said, we like to take retreat days as backwards days. When our kids were little, they loved backwards day because they could eat their dessert first at school and their sandwich last. They could put their clothes on backwards. They could walk into the classroom backwards. They could have a upside down schedule. Why did the teacher brilliantly do that? To bring out play, to bring out creativity, but also to be attentive to every aspect backwards. Doing things backwards or upside down or uncommon to what you normally do actually increases your attentiveness quotient. That's what I want to do, probably for the rest of my life.
That's good.
Help people attend more deeply and more clearly by learning how to do nothing really well.
So good.
That's good.
So
really good.
call me crazy,
I know.
but I just don't think we know how to do very little very well. And God's God's got his eyes on us. He's got his eyes peeled on us. He has such deep and profound affection for us. And when we're so busy, it's like with our kids or our spouse. You're so busy I can't even hug you. You're so busy I can't even whisper something special into your ear. In essence, that's what we're doing with God all the time.
Yeah.
Staying as busy as possible, because, what's he going to do if he actually puts his arm around me and welcomes me home, kisses me on the cheek and puts a new ring on my hand and new sandals for my dirty feet and says, welcome home, let's have a party. When do we do that? We don't. We simply don't. Imagine if the Vineyard were known for some of these things: playfulness, relationship back and forth, learning how to listen to each other. Imagine what the Vineyard would be like if, creativity and beauty were like put back on the list of values.
Yeah.
Right hand, left hand, acclaiming and then listening, having a prayer time together where we're all together in community, and prayer time alone. I think we're neglecting some of these other sides of us that have been unattended, neglected, thrown away, atrophied.
Yeah, and I don't know how you just said it. You said it more eloquently, but I think you said Sabbath as
A day in a lifestyle.
the turnkey. You said it as though
turnkey to the deeper life.
I don't know that most people probably believe that.
I agree.
I mean, I think that I could be wrong,
Yep.
but I think most people would see, at least even my good friends, the kind of good evangelical types who are kind of making their foray into some of these conversations. Most of the time, Sabbath becomes like I just need a break.
Yeah.
Okay, so it becomes, even some of the language we use in our current cultural moment of, I need a reset day, or I need a break, or what's the language used, Danielle? Well, what's Sophia's language of it? Like, I need a day to. It's not recoup. It's not
Like
reset.
downtime or
Oh, yeah, it's something like that. I can't remember.
It's like all
Yeah.
her friends use
Yeah,
the same language, where it's
Yeah.
just like it's not like a me day,
Me
but
day.
it's effectively a me day.
Yeah.
Which again is like, okay. But I think when you're saying Sabbath, I think you're saying something different than that.
I am.
Okay, so-
I am. And this is where it does get confusing in pastoral conversations. I will sit with pastor groups and have them 100% say Sabbath is impossible. 100% of them. And I'm like, wow, Sabbath is impossible. I can't help but just sort of like push that ahead to sort of wonder what's going to happen to that person who's saying that and the church that they're a part of. If we don't know how to rest, if we don't have good rhythms of rest, we are going to be exhausted and we are going to eventually hit that wall, whatever the wall may be. I'm just convinced of it. I've seen it over and over and
Too
over
many
again
times,
in my
yeah.
own life as well as in the lives of others. How do you exegete? My soul finds rest in God alone. Psalm 62, verse 1. 7 words that'll change our life if we take them seriously. What does rest mean? What does spiritual resting look like?
right.
Where we're actually maybe learning how to trust God? Because I think rest and trust
Yes.
are hand in glove. We're never going to really trust God if we're not resting in Him.
Yeah.
We may close our eyes and fold our hands and pray, Lord, I trust you.
Yeah.
But then most of us open our eyes, unclench our fists, and get busy because we're not trusting Him. We're frankly trusting ourselves more than we're trusting Him. So I think rest is fundamental to trust, to relationships, to a walk with God. And this is where I also get in trouble, and probably you can X this out of the talk if you want to, but I think pastoral ministry people need a day off and a Sabbath. Because a day off is not Sabbath when you're
Yes.
replacing one adrenaline for another.
Yep. When you're doing a reset
Yeah.
thing of some kind, that's not a Sabbath.
That's
right.
not Sabbath.
Right. Yes.
And I think this is where the Jewish people teach us a lot about how to shut down,
Yes.
light the candle, pivot to a different way of being together.
Preparation, like preparation
Prep-
for
yeah,
Sabbath.
prepare for it, experience it richly. It does so much more than just a me day can do.
Exactly.
And what I find as well is I find people trying it, and fewer of the percentage of our leadership core out there are actually living it. Because to live it means you're gonna practice it on a weekly basis,
Yeah.
and then it becomes a part of your rhythms, so that you can say in a conversation, "Let's just hold that for a moment. Let's hold that thought for a moment. Let's be together without any further conversation, just for a minute." That's a Sabbath moment.
That's good.
So
Oh, I like that. So
Rest.
you're saying that you're bringing the moments that you're experiencing during Sabbath into the week,
yeah,
and it's Sabbath moments throughout the week.
I think that's what happens once you become Sabbatarian.
Ooh, I like
you-
it. Is that a new word?
Well, no, you realize that
Yeah.
there's so much richness of our daily life that we're missing because of our activity.
Yeah.
We're in the bullet train going 70 miles an hour down the pathway. We can see the beautiful mountains off to the side, but we're not enjoying them. We're just noticing them. They're clipping by.
Yeah.
But when we stop that train and get off that train and stare at the beauty of those mountains, then we really experience the fullness of them. And that can be for a relationship or creation or, most every part of life.
Yeah. Well, it makes me want to ask like 30 things in a row. But what I'm aware of is how, I mean, this isn't just like countercultural. This is like I don't even know the right language for it. It's like a different planet
Yeah,
of
it's
understanding.
counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's like this is, it doesn't quite fit. Even the self-care paradigms aren't saying this. Because there's a way to understand what you're saying in a self-care framework. Like, this is just how you make sure you're the kind of person that can get a whole bunch of stuff done. So if you take care of yourself sufficiently, then you can like run against the wall the rest of your life. You're saying, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you're trying to become a different kind of person that rests in God as a way of life.
Exactly.
And the tricky thing about words is people use them however they want. And so even some of the people you're talking to about these kinds of things would say, oh, well, I have a quiet time every morning. Or, well, we have great vacations. I'm not saying that. I'm saying something else. That's what strikes me is you're putting forward like a way of understanding what it means to live a life with God, let alone be a leader.
I think it's perhaps even reshaping our understanding of the gospel.
Right.
It's that big to me. You talk about self-care. I think self-care is really important.
Yeah.
Self-care would be on the days off, when I need to take care of the errands and mow the lawn and get to those family things.
Do your laundry or whatever, right?
Yeah, self-care, family care. Selfish care is doing what I want to do no matter what. And I don't care if it impacts my spouse or my kids. I'm just going to do it because I have to do this. A lot of selfish care going on. When you talk about soul care, you're talking about Sabbath. You're talking about rhythms and practices that connect me deeper with God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. And the community that God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit has placed me within. So intimacy becomes a key word for Sabbath. And an intimate relationship with God happens a variety of ways. But I don't think it can happen without rest.
Yeah.
See, God is not anti-work. God is pro-work. The creation account tells us so.
Mm-hmm.
But the creation account includes Sabbath. It includes rest.
Yeah.
He didn't need to rest. He wasn't exhausted
Right.
from what he did. He chose to rest. Isn't that awesome? Isn't that beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. When do we do that? Sabbath allows us to reflect on our life with God and our life in God so that we have something to say about God. Otherwise, you're right, a lot of Christian maturity has been previously understood as Bible knowledge or being articulate. I don't think that's maturity. I think maturity comes from the really hard times of life. That's where maturity is fashioned. It's fashioned in the crucible of pain and heartache and suffering. The scriptures don't say, where to pursue life in all of its happy-clappy forms. The scriptures actually do say that in this life you will suffer.
Suffer. Yeah.
How are we helping people suffer? Well,
And suffering produces. I mean,
exactly.
right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So
Okay.
why aren't we talking about this? Why isn't this in our common language? That's what LTI is trying to do. LTI is trying to get it up to the common language, even if people think we're nuts or crazy, because we think that we know as a team we don't want to go back to the old way of pretending that everything's just fine and pretending that productivity is going to make us great, give us a big name or whatever. No, we're trying to flip it all upside down. Let's have upside down day. Let's have backwards day more frequently. And it is counterproductive. It's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It's countercultural.
Yeah.
We recognize that. Basically practicing a preference for God. That's what discernment is. It's practicing regularly a preference for God. It's similar to Brother Lawrence's practicing the presence of God, which is also really good. But I love what Reuben does to just nuance it slightly to say we need to learn how to practice in our everyday lives a preference for God. So what would God say? Or what would God want us to notice? Or let's pause for a moment and see, let's interview the Holy Spirit on this matter. And so in piecemeal fashion throughout our day, we're practicing what it means to be a discerning life, a discerning person. And so chapter 8 of my book is all about the process. It's all about the 10 big questions that we need to ask as we're discerning between options. And it's a modernization of St. Ignatius's work in discernment, which is really difficult and challenging to read. I've spent time over the past decade or so just learning how to dissect what he's saying for the modern church. And the 10 questions that I have come from really my spiritual director and I working on it together, and me listening to him teach, he listening to me teach, and we're refining it. So I give credit to him in that chapter. But it's questions that, we can go there if you want to, just to talk about it. But it's questions we need to ask to make a decision among options. Knowing that, and Ignatius would say this, that's not the entirety of our life. The entirety of our life includes times when we're making decisions because it's obvious. I'm tired. God, do you want me to get some rest? Well, yes, I want you to get some rest. I'm hungry. Should I eat? Yeah. If you're not fasting, yes, eat. He would say that the majority of our life is built around the obvious. Or secondly, he would say that there's parts of life that we simply need to wait. We need to put it on hold, press the pause button, and learn how to wait. We've just been talking about that. And then he said, thirdly, there are times in life when we have options. Is it A or is it B? Or is it A, B, C, or D? What do you do in those times when you're trying to say, well, God, what do you want? There needs to be a process. And so I spell out sort of a modern day Ignatian process for discernment.
As we celebrate our 50-year anniversary in the Vineyard, if you're interested in learning more about Vineyard history, there are plenty of resources for you. Check out our show notes for links to books, YouTube videos, and more to learn about Vineyard history and identity. And make sure to keep listening to the podcast this year for stories of Vineyard churches throughout the year.